Good morning. How are we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, it's just going to be you and I having a little bit of fun talking about a hand with pocket aces. And sure, aces are usually pretty simple. And a 4-bet pot, usually even more simple. A 10 to limit online, usually even more simple. But in this spot, we got an interesting turn action, actually a misclick from Hero, and Hero's curious if that created a better or a worse situation. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank LordKelvin for sending this hand in, and without further ado, let's break it down and see what's going on. Alright, so in this situation, it folds around to Hero, who opens the button, totally standard, gets 3-bet by Fennec, okay, Hero decides to 4-bet, and here we go. So in the write-up, LordKelvin says this: Fennec was an unknown player, never played with him before. He was already in action when I joined the table, and he struck me as a middle-of-the-road tag player. He did fire the occasional bluff, and he could call light to snap off possible bluffs. This was the first hand I've played with him. This was the first 3-bet I saw him make, and I 4-bet a little bit more than a min-raise to induce a 5-bet shove, but that didn't happen as he just called the 4-bet. Okay, so far, so good. I love all the information. I love that you're thinking about all these things. This is great. I also love your action, your sizing, right? It's very rare that I don't get to complain about sizing, but honestly, everything here looks pretty darn sharp. I'm good to go here. However, there is one thing in the write-up that I think is definitely worth mentioning, and it may seem a little not important, but I think it is. So here's what you said. You said Fennec was an unknown player, never played with him before. Okay, cool. But then you also go on to say he did fire the occasional bluff, he could call light to snap off possible bluffs. You could only have that kind of specific information if you knew what kind of player this was, right? So one of two things are false here. Either he's not an unknown player, or he is an unknown player and you're making some massive assumptions about what he's capable of. And that's one of the biggest things I see people doing, is either they're getting lazy on whether or not someone is unknown or not and not working hard enough to take unknown players and make them into known players. Or even worse, they're making massive assumptions about what people are or are not capable of. So both of these things can't be true. He can't be unknown, and you also have massive information about his ability to bluff and ability to call off lightly and snap off possible bluffs. You can't have both of those things. So be really honest with yourself. And again, LordKelvin, I'm not trying to call you out. This is something that I see a lot of the time. When you're making these kind of decisions, and especially when you're writing this stuff down post-session or in middle of sessions to take notes and review later, be really honest with yourself about what you know and what you don't know yet. And be very careful when you're making assumptions. And if you are able to say, yep, he can fire the occasional bluff, he definitely can snap off possible bluffs, there's no way in heck he should be an unknown player. You should definitely know at minimum, is this for sure a tag? Is this for sure a looser tag? Is this a lag? Is this super fishy? What is this player? He could never be both an unknown and you have great information about bluff propensity and ability to snap off bluffs. Okay. Again, I think it's really, really important. A lot of people do that. They make that kind of decision and you can't have it both ways. Okay. That's the only thing I'm going to say on that. So again, as played, Fennec does decide to call, totally fine, go to the flop, check, Hero decides to fire, and Fennec calls. Well, let's back up a quick second. First thing I like to do whenever I'm in a 3-bet or 4-bet or a 5-bet pot is figure out that SPR right away. So real quick, what's the SPR in this situation? Pretty simple, right? If you don't know what SPR is, or you're like, what the heck are you talking about? First and foremost, it's about 2.5. And if you don't know what the heck we're talking about here, no problem. I'll leave a link in the description box. Definitely give that a quick watch and read. It's going to be very, very helpful. SPR essentially helps us discern how automatically committed we are or are not to a pot. And usually in 3-bet pots and 4-bet pots and 5-bet pots, it's going to be a pretty small SPR, sub 3. And when it's under 3, I'm in kind of an automatic commitment mindset pretty much right off the bat. So here, with roughly 2.5 SPR, if we decide to bet and Fennec shoves, I'm snapping it off. If he happens to have pocket queens, good for him. If he happens to have 7-5 suited, I mean, really good for him. And it's just one of those where, sure, he can still have some monsters. SPR doesn't say, no, it's impossible for him to have monsters. It just says we're pretty much automatically committed. Chances are that if he got in here with some goofy stuff that happened to improve, 1, we still have equity. That's great. And 2, they probably made the larger mistake within the hand as a whole by getting involved too wide pre-flop, and that's fine. It is what it is. Sometimes they get rewarded, but more often than not, if we're making super nitty folds in small SPR pots, we're probably the ones that are making massive mistakes and definitely overestimating our opponent's range and action propensity. So that's just kind of first and foremost. And because we don't recalculate SPR on turns and rivers, I make my decision right this moment. So 2.5 SPR, I have an overpair, I have an opponent who could definitely show up with things that I crush, right? Let's just say ace queen and king queen are possible. Cool, that's pretty much all I need to feel super, super comfortable in this spot. He could have pocket kings, we crushed that as well. So again, I'm not trying to find ways to fold here, I'm trying to find ways to get my stack inside here. So I love the fact that we're betting. Size I think is a little bit large and probably unnecessary and probably doesn't induce the most amount of mistakes that you want, but I digress. I'd probably make this a little smaller. Actually, definitely would make it a little bit smaller, and Fennec decides to call. Okay, fine, rock and roll, go from here. So turn is a 4 of clubs, Fennec checks, and Hero makes a very, very small bet. Alright, so after Hero makes this incredibly small bet, Fennec decides to check raise, and here we are. LordKelvin says this in the write-up. On the turn, I was pretty sure the 4 didn't make him a straight, and the min bet was a misclick, but he wouldn't know that. I wondered if this misclick didn't induce a big raise. I figured to be ahead of everything except for trip queens, a hand he very well could have that would be consistent with his play both pre-flop and in response to the half-pot c-bet. Yep, 100% agree with that. Trip queens could certainly be here. And LordKelvin goes on to say this. I'm holding back the results as to not bias the analysis, so all the action ends right this moment. The big question here is there any time you could get away from this hand? If so, should I have abandoned this hand, or would that be too nitty? So first and foremost, I love the fact you're asking yourself that question. Would folding here be too nitty? And that's just a question that a lot of people should start asking themselves far more often. Would checking here be too nitty? Would folding here be too nitty? Would just calling here be too nitty? Always ask yourself that question. It really sets a good frame for, is this more of a passive action I'm making? Is this done out of fear or ego? Or is this a spot where being aggressive would probably be far better? So definitely make sure to get in the habit of asking yourself that question. LordKelvin, great job for asking it. Here's the honest truth here. I'm going to answer both of those questions right this moment. Right? Is there any time that I could get away from this hand? No. Should we have abandoned this hand here? Would that be too nitty? Yes, it would be far too nitty to fold here. And actually both of those answers between one, I'm not going to get away from this, and would it be too nitty being yes, those are very, very interrelated. So if I'm ever going to make a very, very nitty fold, I need to be damn certain. Okay, I cannot stress that enough. Too many people make the nitty fold the default part of their game and don't base it enough on their opponent and what their range likely is or what their frequencies likely are. They make the nitty fold based upon their own comfort levels. I don't want to risk a lot of money without a lot of certainty. And that's a problem because there's a ton of uncertainty in this game. So you need to be comfortable risking money with uncertainty. Now, we're not doing so in a dumb, gamblery, like no thought process kind of way. That's definitely not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is you can't just make this because you could be behind. You can't fold here because he could have trip queens. He could have kings. And there are 3 combinations of pocket queens. There are 6 combinations of pocket kings. Okay, dare I say more? What about combinations of ace queen, king queen, any other weird queen kind of hand that he could have had here? Again, definitely something that favors us. Now, I agree here. I'm not super worried about Fennec having a straight. If he happens to have 6-8, he can have a lot of other hands as well, right? And you have to think about that from a logical consistency point of view, because a lot of people say, well, Fennec could have 5-4 here. Okay, if you could have 5-4, could he have 7-6 and 5-6 as well? Would he take the same exact line with that, considering that your bet probably looks ridiculous and maybe you just induced a raise from those kind of hands? I think that makes a lot of sense. So again, like there's a lot of uncertainty in exactly what Fennec is holding right this moment. But there are not a lot of super strong combos. And if there are a lot of strong combos in the sense of a lot of 2 pairs and sets are possible here, right? Did Fennec really 3-bet pocket 4s pre-flop and then call the flop with it? Like, I don't know. Did he really call a 4-bet? Did he really 3-bet and then call a 4-bet with pocket 5s? I don't think so. So again, like, there aren't realistically a ton of super strong combos. And if there are, well, there's a lot of combos of other stuff as well that may spaz out once you make this small bet. And again, I think I'm definitely agreeing with LordKelvin that the small bet can induce a lot of wonky action. And if that's the case, a lot of that wonky action doesn't actually beat me. A lot of the wonky action actually favors me. And as such, folding here would, yes, be far, far, far too nitty. So, no, I'm not getting away from this hand. No, I'm not abandoning it. Yes, it would be far too nitty to fold here. And because of that, I'm in my normal stack off mode. And again, you notice that a lot of this bends back to that original flop question. What was the SPR? What's my plan in that SPR with my hand strength? What should I do from there? What's my plan going forward? So even though, yes, the turn bet was definitely a mistake, was definitely a misclick, and Fennec may or may not know that, but probably doesn't if he's truly an unknown, like we stated in the first place, then yeah, I'm pretty comfortable in this situation, getting it in and going from there. So again, I know this was a lot of stuff to consider for what should be a pretty darn simple hand at 10 no limit online. Yes, but there's a lot of really important big picture ideas we need to pull from this, which includes induction, whether it's purposeful or a mistake, being nitty when that's good, when that's bad, understanding inconsistencies between truly knowing what a player does, what their frequencies and propensities look like, versus actually knowing what kind of player type they are, and making sure that there's congruency there. So again, I love the fact that you're bringing this hand up, LordKelvin, right? I just hope you're bringing it up for the right reasons, not because you lost the hand, right? We're going to lose hands. That's a foregone conclusion. If you try to play poker and never lose a hand, you will not be a winning player in the long run. I guarantee you. And if you are, maybe you could beat, smaller limits, but as you play against harder opponents, as you move up and play in tougher games, you're not going to win if that's your thought process. Okay, so you have to continue improving, and the whole thing is not to get results oriented, not to think you're going to win every single pot. It's just to play every single pot as best as you possibly can into the highest EV that you possibly can. So again, not folding here. LordKelvin, thank you so much for sending this hand in. And if you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'd love to talk more about this. Just leave a comment down below. Oh, and one final thing, because I didn't actually specify what I would do here, I would just shove right here, because I think that if Fennec is doing this but draws or anything like that, let's just stack it in right here and not worry about it, because if we do decide to call, it's not like we're representing very many bluffy kind of hands, so I don't think I can induce Fennec to put the rest of it in with a bluff or a whiff draw or anything on the river, but I think there are hands that he can definitely stack it in right this moment. So I'm just going to shove over the top, be done with it. It's essentially a min raise back to Fennec, and I think Fennec is going to continue with, again, a range that we do very, very well against. So thank you so much for hanging out today. Again, if you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to let me know. If you're looking for your next step today, I would definitely suggest taking my free hand reading email course. Multiple lessons sent to you, one per day, and it's definitely going to help, especially if you struggle with some of this hand reading stuff. Everything we do. Yes, calculating SPR is very simple and that's very formulaic, but it all revolves around hand reading. How many combos do we beat? How many combinations beat us? How do we create lines based upon that? That's all wrapped around hand reading, and you're going to learn a lot about that in my free course. So you can just go to splitsuit.com/free-HRC or click the link down in the description box. That will help a tremendous amount if you're trying to work on your hand reading skills. So that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for hanging out. You need anything, let me know. Otherwise, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in that email course shortly. As always, hope you have a great day. If you need anything, let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there and happy grinding.